Welcome to episode 2 of the Livin The Dream podcast. I'm Rishi Barran, your host today, and I'm a course director at the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting at Full Sail University. And this podcast was created to highlight our very successful graduates. We've only been in operation for a few years at this point, but a lot of them have gone on to do great things, including the young man that I have on today, Richard Tieman. Richard, I wore my 49ers red for you. I hope you appreciate that. I appreciate seeing you wearing your lavalier microphone, but thanks for taking some time out of your really busy schedule to be with us.
Yeah, and if that's 49ers red, I need my eyes checked. That looks like Pacific Northwest salmon pink is what that looks like, which would be, homage to my home state of Washington. But I appreciate the effort nonetheless.
I didn't know I had Pablo Picasso here to break down the colors. No, I did the best I could, Richard. I didn't have Jerry Rice jersey or anything like that, but this is what I got for you. But this should be fun. And really the hardest part about doing this is going to be keeping it within the time constraints, because we could probably talk for like 5 hours, Richard, with all the stuff that you've done and kind of the relationship that we've built. But much appreciated to have you here. The beginning of this podcast is always the same, and I've actually changed one thing a little differently this week. What I did last week was I asked the 3 big questions off the top, but I had a conversation with the great Mike Tuck about path in an interview, and because of that, I'm going to segment it into a 10 to 15 minute segment with the first question and associated questions, and then do that for the second and third. So the first question will always be, how did your dream start? The second question is, what has it been like to live the dream now? And the third question will be, where will the dream take you eventually? But we'll get to those other 2 down the road in a minute, Richard. But first of all, how did your dream start to become a sportscaster?
It's one of those loaded questions where you have to kind of look back, and it's not just one moment, it's not one instance. There were several along the way. I mean, I was in garage bands since I was 16 and loved performing in front of people. I was a drummer. I loved live crowds, but I always loved sports too. I wasn't very good at them, but I loved following football. My team was the 49ers, as you mentioned earlier. But, to think back on everything going on and just how it sort of evolved. I mean, I was big into karaoke, and I met my wife at a karaoke dive bar. And it took a trip to Orlando. We honeymooned down at Universal Studios Orlando, and we went to their live karaoke bar. And I said, what if I opened a karaoke bar? But it's a sports bar during the week, and on the weekends we have karaoke at night. Because, I'm good with a microphone. I can talk to people. I can carry a conversation. I can host events. And then I went to business school to get my small business degree so that I could get a loan and open up a sports bar. And all of a sudden, a friend of mine at our 10-year high school reunion is having a conversation with me talking about, hey, what do you think about this team and this team? And I'm like, oh, man. And we talked for a good 20 minutes. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about being an analyst? And I said, absolutely not. Can't stand them. And so he said, well, what about your own podcast? And I was like, wow, I've never thought about having my own podcast. He's like, well, you should think of it, and you should consider it. So I did. We got a podcasting kit. It was something to pass the time while I went to business school. And then that led into just kind of everything. It really snowballed from there,
Well, and you're talking about the Fan Show podcast, I assume, which has been amazing. And one of the best things that we've had in our program in a lot of ways, Richard, is you came in already doing that. It was at a high level. You had a great listenership and viewership for that podcast. Tell me about how that all came to be. What inspired what you do with the Fan Show?
Well, the Fan Show hasn't always been called the Fan Show. When it launched, it was the Butt Fumble podcast, because I wanted it to be something that when people heard the name, they knew what it was. They're like, oh, so this is a football podcast that's probably got some humor to it. And that's the idea. I didn't want to be taken seriously, because I just wanted to have fun with it. Talk for 30 to 40 minutes with whoever about sports and just see where it went. And a lot of people after the first couple said, you might really be onto something here. So they said, you got to find your niche though, because when NFL season rolls around, what I've learned is that you'd think, man, this is my time of year. Like, let's go, let's content. but I'm white noise because everyone and their mom over the last 6 years of doing this has come up with a podcast. So in 2016, the Spokane Empire, a local indoor or arena football team, switched from the Arena Football League 2 as the Spokane Shock to the Indoor Football League and rebranded as the Spokane Empire. And I said, this could be my niche, because not many people know who the Empire are. They know the Shock name, but not the Empire name. So I reached out to them. I said, hey, I have this podcast. I'm looking for a team to follow. What do you think? And, lengthier conversation was had, but they said, yeah, we'll give you exclusive access to players and coaches. We'll promote your content. It was a great relationship. So got my foot in the door that way. And what I discovered was that at this level of football, you have these players who are, they've just been on the wrong side of luck their whole early career. They had an injury at a wrong time. They played at too small a school, or they didn't have the right agent or scouting or connection or whatever. And these guys don't really know the kind of spotlight that they deserve beyond the local news. So here I am giving them attention, time of day, interviewing them, and they have so much to say. And so they have, an extended family back home, wherever that is, and friends and a crew. And so they share it once on Facebook, and then all those people share it. And then all those people who know people share it. And it just snowballed again. So it's one snowball after another with how I got here. But it was the beauty in the finer details. And so when I went to have my logo for the Butt Fumble podcast redone, I reached out to the guy who did the logo for the Spokane Empire, did a great job with it. He's worked with the Marlins and a few other professional teams. I said, hey, how do I make this look not so crappy? And he said, well, I can work my magic with it, but honestly, you got to ask yourself how serious you want to take this and how far you want this to go. Because I can tell you right now, in my experience, there's probably not going to be a lot of big name people lining up to be a guest on the Butt Fumble podcast. And I said, you're absolutely right. So we came up with the fan show, and it was a bit of a process because I wanted something that was marketable, that was being kind of used. You see a lot of, radio networks, 1080 AM, the fan, so it was there. But I said, how do I distinguish myself differently? So I put the periods in between the F, A, and the N, and decided to go with football and nonsense, which was football primarily, but it opened the door ever so slightly to whatever else I was interested in. And I mean, I've had a variety of guests that fit all over the place in the nonsense department. And it's been a crazy, wild ride that I never once expected to be where it is today.
And you've built so much engagement. And one thing I really appreciate about you, Richard, is the way that not only with your guests and your fans, but also with the athletes themselves, you've built relationships, and those relationships have taken you a long way, which we'll get into shortly. But really just that idea that you brought up at the beginning, having a specific angle, a specific focus, I think that's done you really, really well. And really, that was the start of everything. You did it yourself. But then at that point, you're doing pretty well with the show, but you decided you wanted to learn more about broadcasting, and you came to Full Sail University for that. What went into that decision?
Well, that was a discussion with my wife, who, if you have one or a significant other, you know that you want their support in everything that you do, but also that you have to have their approval for several big decisions in life, going back to school being one of them. So she had gone to cosmetology school to get her license, and she loves what she does. And I wanted that. I wanted to love what I do and get paid to do it. And I said, what am I missing? Like I can do it clearly, but I'm missing the paperwork maybe, and you look at a lot of applications, a lot of ads, and they say they want experience and they want the degree. And, I hate those things, as you may know, but so we talked about it. I said, well, I have this business degree and I haven't done anything with it, because even with a small business degree, I'm applying to be like a manager for these restaurants or these sports bars, and they want like 3 years experience on top of it. It's like, well, how do I get that experience if you're not going to hire me to get the experience? So she said, well, maybe we go a different direction for you. And I said, I'm not going to go back to school just to have another degree that I can't do anything with. And I said, plus with communications degrees, you usually have to go for 4 years. And then after that, you have to intern, typically unpaid internship for a couple of years before you even get your shot at like a, graveyard radio spot. And I knew that that's how it worked with radio, especially in Spokane. So we thought about it. She graduated. She was happy. She was doing something with it. And then we saw an ad on Facebook, the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. And she said, if this isn't a sign from higher up, I don't know what is, because this is specifically what you're looking for. It's 2 years of your time, and you're going to learn everything that you don't already know. And everything that you do know, you're just going to be able to become even better at it. So I called, I applied, I got accepted, and I really didn't know what to expect because, like any, young buck who has been around the game for a few years, I thought I knew everything, and come to find out, I did not know everything. Even the first couple of courses, I was like, wow, so that's how you do this, and that's how that's done. Okay, and I was all in, fully invested, because you guys there at the DP school know a lot more than I do. And at my age, it's kind of one of those things where I need to stop pretending like I know everything or know better and just shut up and listen, because I don't have youth or time really on my side. These 10-year younger kids getting graduated going on have a lot of more of a head start than I do.
Well, that's a great mindset to have, to listen, be open and ready to learn. Really, that's why you come to college, right? So that's a great strategy, and it certainly worked out for you. We're talking to Richard Tieman, the media specialist for the Omaha Beef football team in the Champions Indoor Football League. And he's also a media specialist and director of media and marketing for the league itself. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Richard, you decided to come to be part of our program and also to be part of our first online class. And you were one of our first online graduates, and really set the bar for what we were hoping for from online students, because we didn't know, right? Because it was different for us too as instructors, not having taught this type of subject material online. What was your experience like as an online student?
It was tough. We knew, or I guess I knew, I can't speak for guys like Melvin and Mike and Wesley, but I've talked to them several times, and we all pretty much agreed that we were the guinea pigs, and it's to be expected. This was the inaugural online class for this brand new program. What is this going to look like? And so we got the kits, which were great. I mean, you get this MacBook, you get this lighting kit, you get this camera, you get all the stuff that you need to do all the assignments and fulfill all the duties that you're being asked of, as a field reporter, as a producer and editor, as a desk host, whatever it is that you want to be. You guys gave us the tools to do that. The challenges, though, I mean, a lot of people may have thrown a pity party over the different challenges that we face, but I looked at it as, taking advantage of the disadvantages that we had. And I knew that you guys had a fancy studio and a lot of big toys down there on campus. And then I went for the Full Sail Hall of Fame week and got to see it. And I was like, wow, so this is what on campus gets. And that kind of motivated me even more to, I guess, think outside the box, because what I had learned was everything that I had done with the fan show leading up to that point, as far as if I booked this guest and people would ask me, well, how'd you do that? Well, I asked, but there's a few more steps involved than that. If I wanted a comedian that was coming by the Spokane Comedy Club, I either reached out to the comedy club itself or I Googled the person, and 9 times out of 10, they'll have their own website, and on there somewhere is a contact us. And then you usually go through a few channels and you send a few emails until you find the right person that you need to be talking to. And then you just ask, hey, you're going to be in my city this weekend. How do I, can I get them on my show for an interview? And then you'll either get a yes or a no, or even a maybe. But when it comes to being an online student, you have to think like that, because you don't have a studio you can go to every day. You don't have a classroom you're sitting in every day. So when it came to assignments, like, all right, so you guys are pretending that you're a field reporter, you're out in front of so-and-so stadium, you're previewing the big AFC championship matchup between this team and this team. Let's see what you got. I drove around for probably a half hour in Spokane looking for a stadium, high school, college, whatever, an arena to shoot this in front of, because I was like, I want this to look like I know what I'm doing. And I went to Gonzaga's campus out in front of their baseball stadium.
Wow.
And I shot, I think, probably 2 or 3 takes of this. And then the lights went off. And I was like, I guess that's it. And then I came back and I looked it over and I turned it in. I think it was an assignment for your class,
It
actually.
was, yeah. It was
But
the first example for a long time because you did a great job with it.
but those were the kind of things that, you can't let not being there and not having access to this or this get you down. You have to go. And I think that's a trait that you guys are really looking for in the long run, is these people that will think on their feet, that will think outside the box and try to make the most of whatever situation they're in while meeting deadlines and having made sure that you've got your quality of content up to par with where it needs to be for where you are in the program. And it's a tough juggling act. It really is, because you're concerned about one thing. Well, okay, where am I going to do this? And then you find it and you're like, oh, is my mic on? Am I well lit? Do I have too much noise in the background? And then in the end, you got to turn it in on time and make sure that it uploads appropriately by that midnight deadline. So it was an experience for sure, but one that I feel made me better overall. And I certainly hope more online students think that way moving forward. Every city is going to present you with its different challenges. As far as, if you live in a bigger city, you probably have more options as far as stadiums, arenas, and stuff like that. But it never hurts to reach out and ask, hey, this is who I am and what I'm doing. Can I come there and do this? Because there's a few times where I'm sure security will escort you out before you even get a chance to shoot one take of your stand-up. But it just never hurts to try or ask.
And that's what this business requires, is that extra initiative. You're going to learn a lot through this program, but you got to do something yourself. We're here to help you. We're going to help you try to get jobs. We're going to help you connect with the right people if you've earned that right. But you got to do the extra work. And Richard, I've always applauded that about you. You've done so much extra work, and that's why you're having success right now. So keep up the good work. I mean, it's worked out for you. What were some of the biggest takeaways from the program for you?
For me personally, it was interviewing. I didn't know that there was a way to interview. And Mike Tuck, man, I mean, he takes you to school in that course, tells you what to watch out for. I already knew, vaguely kind of, okay, don't ask, closed questions like yes or no. Try to keep them open-ended. But I didn't realize that there was even a second, third, or fourth step of depth to that. So that was huge. Production wise, it was great to learn about lighting. I had never used a prompter before, still not a big fan of them. I like to try to memorize my stuff just to get in a rhythm and feel a little bit more confident about presenting it in front of a camera. But lighting, makeup, sound, I mean, there's just so much to it that goes on that people don't realize, because there's so many podcasters out there now that just think that they can buy a mic and a program like Stitcher or whatever and record for 30 minutes, either talking with themselves or a guest, and they just post that and it's good enough. But it's not. What's going to separate the average Joe podcast from the people that are actually doing it past 10 episodes are the ones that have taken the time to see, how can I make this better? And they're applying what they know, what they've learned, and what they've, trial and errored on. And I think that's kind of what the school and the program cuts out for you, is that it's not so much trial and error. It's like, hey, you're probably going to come to this bridge. Here's how you cross it. And I think that was huge for me.
That's great advice for sure, moving forward for anybody who's looking into it, because that's really what it's all about, right? Richard Tieman with me, media specialist for the Omaha Beef, winners of 4 straight games, about to go into the playoffs soon. And I know Richard used to tell me that you saw each class each month at Full Sail as like a video game in a level, and you had to beat the boss at the end and move on to the next one. Well, you've passed level 1. We are now on to level 2 and our second big question of the day. So that is, what is it like to be living the dream right now?
Busy. I mean, you think as a student, your sleep schedule is way out of whack, especially if you're juggling a full-time job, part-time job, if you're a husband, a wife, a parent, whatever the case may be. I think the biggest thing is having the right support system. And, my parents support me because they support whatever it is I do. But I know through my band phase, through my garage band phase, my dad didn't get it. I can tell you for 100%, my dad did not get it. But he was the all around athlete of the family. And here I was kind of the runt of the litter because throughout most of my school career, I was the smallest one in my class until about sophomore year high school. So sports did not come very easy to me. So getting into sportscasting, he kind of gets it now. But my wife, of going on 8 years now. Wow, that's crazy. She has been just, I mean, superhero-esque in the way that she supports it. And we support each other because, as I mentioned, she went to beauty school to become a stylist. And I think that what she's been able to do and how she continues to perfect her craft has been amazing. And it inspires me. And I hope that my journey inspires her too, because there's been a couple of times, doesn't matter how much you love what you do or love your job, there's going to be days where you're just like, is this worth it? You know, where you're coming off 2 hours of sleep or less. Maybe you pulled an all-nighter and you've still got a dozen different things that you have to get done before the end of that day. And you're just trying to power through. There's not enough Red Bull in the world that's going to help you. So the dream is very much a roller coaster, but I think, you know, that it is a dream really helps. I love what I do. I love what I do for the beef. Being not having a short leash and a tight collar with my creative whatever, you know, my ideas and things like that has definitely helped, because some people get in with a company or a team and they're really restrained, and I hate that because I'm a creative person where I like to be fueled by enthusiasm and like, oh yeah, I like that idea, and what if you tried this, and you just spitball for an hour and you come up with these great ideas. And thankfully everything that I've brought to the table for the beef and the league has been welcomed with open arms, and they couldn't be happier about the product that I've put out. So it's great to have that support system as well. So I can't speak to the people that, you know, are working for a company that they thought was like their dream job, and it turns out that it's not, and they're questioning whether or not that they should hold out and endure and see where it takes them, or if they should ditch and find another. I really can't speak to that. I just know that for me, I moved from Spokane to Sioux Falls for what I thought was a dream job and was very limited to what I could do creatively, which sucked. But then the pandemic hit. I was let go 6 months later. I was devastated. But now you fast forward to a year later, and I've done 6 months of content creation for a team and an entire league, and I'm loving every second of it. So it's just a tough call, but you'll know, I think, deep down what the best course of action for you, because not everybody kind of gets shoved through different doors like I did. You know, some people have to make the hard choices.
And everyone has a unique journey. And you just mentioned yours took you to a place that you thought was the dream first job in this industry. And then COVID hit. You had to face that adversity. And I always say the people who make it in this business are the strong who can persevere. And that was a big challenge. How did you overcome probably the emotions associated with having to get the job, then lose the job, and now you found a way to get back in?
Well, it's hard to separate the feeling of losing a dream job and then just everything that went on in 2020. I mean, them being lumped together probably makes it 10 times harder than it should have been. But you get let go from this dream job. And I mean, I say dream job, I'm not throwing that term around loosely. I got paid to move across the country. We moved through a blizzard, which I don't recommend to anyone. If you can move, move in the springtime. But I get there and I've got this desk, we've got this office, I've got this title as director of communications. I have a company car, you know, with the team logo on it. I mean, this was in my mind the dream job. And I'm going to be doing all this stuff with social media and hosting events. And it just seemed great. So to be let go from that was devastating because we got so ramped up for a game day that never happened. I mean, we were supposed to have our first home game, and 2 days out, it gets postponed, and then it gets postponed again, and then the season gets canceled. So that was devastating. But I tell people, you know, if you are looking back at 2020 and say, you know, 2020 almost broke me, I think you're full of crap, because it broke me a couple of times. And that losing that job was the first one. And then there were some dark moments, you know, but I think you have to really take those moments and evaluate where you are as a person and be like, okay, what do I do now? And I remember having a conversation with you just before that, you and Gus saying, hey, things are so crazy right now. Like, should I take a break from school? Because I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle the workload with my job. And this is the home stretch of courses where you guys are expecting my best. And I don't want to just limp to the finish line. I want to finish stronger than I ever have. And you and Gus both said, finish as strong as you can, but we're afraid that if you take a break and leave, you won't come back because you'll get so tied up. Well, then I lost my job and I was able to focus all that energy on school. So it's weird how things happen. Like, it really is. I wish I could explain just how things happen and how to handle different situations, but you won't know until you go through them. And so here I am, jobless, but I have all this time to focus on school. I was able to put together some of my best content. I was able to go through your class and Radcliffe's class, put together a reel that I was really proud of and happy for, and then graduate. And I felt great about graduating. It sucked not to walk because of the pandemic. So like I said, that roller coaster continues. You have the low point of losing a job, the high of, hey, I can focus on school, and then the high of I'm graduating, but the low of, well, I'm not going to walk across that stage right now. So you really have to feel each ground ball as it comes to you. And I'm not even a baseball player, but I think, when it comes to living the dream, that you have to expect the unexpected, as cliche as that is. And I know you hate cliches, but
and yet I call the podcast Livin The Dream. How about that?
Yeah. Very true.
Well, I think we're going to eventually, I was talking to Jeff Schetzel about this. I want to have like Jeff Schetzel in like a bad mood, being like the sarcastic, like living the dream, and adding that in there. So that was kind of part of the idea. But no, you mentioned there are ups and downs in this business, but now you're doing it, right? And I think the plethora of different skills you developed have really helped you. I know that you have a number of different duties between, being the director of media and marketing for the whole league, and then a media specialist for the Omaha Beef. So back to something we talked about on social media earlier this week, Richard, when we were doing a little office space chat. What would you say you do here for the Beef?
So what I do is I create content each week, and it's fun because when I was approached to do this job, I knew of the CIF. I had been following and covered the IFL, which at the time was considered the better of the two leagues because the CIF just didn't have its stuff together. They got through each season, but there were a lot of areas for improvement. And so when I got approached by the commissioner, who was also the owner of the team I work for, he said, look, I know that there's things we can do to be better. And I think that's where you come in. And so I told him all the ideas that I had for the IFL and all the ideas I had for the team I worked for. And I said, here's what I was trying to do for them. And they weren't interested. So what do you think about these? And he's like, we've been trying to do several of these for a while along with these. And he said, so why don't we bring you on the team first? That way I have some examples to present to the league. And then probably around the time that the season's getting ready to start, I present it to them and we see if we can get you to do this for the whole league too. So each week I would sit down with players, as we counted down from off season to training camp and then the regular season, interviewed two players at a time, usually one offense, one defense. That was called the butcher block because the idea was to, put them on the chopping block and ask them some tough questions and get to know them a little bit. And then the other one was the corral, and that's where I would interview the coaches, the front office staff, even the director of the dance team. And, thankfully, a team like the Omaha Beef is very marketable. There's a lot of opportunity for different themes and names of stuff. Like they thought about like the meat locker. They're all male cheerleader dance team guys are called the rump roasters. So, I mean, clearly in 22 years of doing this, they've come up with some ideas of their own. So it was fun creatively to be a part of this team because it was a little easier than maybe another team would have been. I'm not saying I'm not up for the challenge, but I think how quickly I hit the ground running going into this, it certainly helped. So I created, recorded, edited, and produced these shows for each week. And then if there was an event, they would pay for me to drive down there. It's about 2.5 hour drive from Sioux Falls to Omaha. and I would host that. I would get some video footage. They are very active in community events like the diaper drive. That was one of the first video highlight packages I put together, interviewed some people, did a VO. So I've always kept busy. During the season, I still do that. It's only one show twice a week called The Roundup. And then I also host a pregame show that's pre-recorded with Coach called Beef Stew, which I was very excited about bringing to life. It was an idea I had that I was so excited to do because we do the key ingredients to victory for that day. That plays up on the big screen at the arena, and then we put it on social media. I host the halftime show on field as well as the post-game report. So I'm very active. Everything media I do, and so that's where the title media specialist comes in.
And I know you really wanted to work for a team. I remember we'd have conversations. Do you want to be weekend sports anchor? Do you want to do this or that? You always kind of had that in mind to work for an organization. What has it been like working for a team?
I think it's great to have a team to call your own. I mean, working for the league, there's some conflicts of interest, but every game that we've played, home or away, I will go and I will introduce myself to the front office, the owners, the coach, and some of the players that maybe I've seen their highlights or seen their stats. And obviously, as the season's gone on, I've gotten to know more and more of them because we've either seen them more than once, or obviously they've been featured in the top 10 plays a couple of times, or they've been player of the week a few times. And so I try to put it out there like, I know that I wear orange and black on game day, but it's one of those things where I'm trying to be as impartial and unbiased as I can when it comes to the end of the day. And I think a lot of them really respect that. And I'm very thankful for that because it's been a challenge, but it's nothing new at this level of football. A lot of people double dip like I do. And so I think for me, for game days, it's been great because I have a team to call my own. I get to cheer, I get to be excited, but nobody takes it personal. On the other side, they get it, they understand, and I've got friends on all the teams now, and I think they also understand too. And you can't please everybody, which I get, and that's an important thing for people to remember. You will not please everybody, no matter how big of a fan you are for or against something. You will not please everyone. But working with coach and doing beef stew and joking around and then getting to know the fans at the different events, even guest color commentating in a couple of away games. I mean, it's being with the team. If you do what you were brought on to do well, it'll open a lot of other opportunities because I was only able to guest color commentate because we went to Wyoming, which was further than their normal color guy is willing to travel. And of course, a lot of it comes down to schedule as well. And then at another away game that was pretty far, and they said, hey, you've done commentary before. Do you want to join me in the booth? Absolutely. Let's do it. And then you have to go and you have to crush that too. And then the host of the coaches show was out of town on a personal matter. And he said, hey, it's last minute. Can you host the coaches show? I'll get everything set up for you. The guys at the studio will work with you and play the commercials and whatever. You'll just have to host. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So it really is a great place to be a part of a team, and then to do what you do it well, and then create more opportunities to, eventually work where you ultimately want to be.
I love all the things you're bringing up, Richard. You should be a textbook for our students. Availability, can-do attitude, creativity, building relationships, taking self-initiative to make your dream happen. I love it. How often do you reflect on how far you've come from a young man in Spokane to many, many jobs to Full Sail to now here?
It's pretty easy to look back on the days that I was in a garage band because it's like, wow, I was clean shaven with a giant red mohawk, and very rarely did my shirts have sleeves. And then I wore jeans that were a few sizes too tight. And now here I am in a full suit with a beard and styled hair. And I get confused for front office, like GM or ownership all the time, which I'm okay with because when I started covering the sport back in 2016 with the Empire as an independent journalist, which is technically what I was, I said, what do I wear for something like this? And I had seen guys there, photographers who wore t-shirts, hoodies, even polos. And I said, yeah, I kind of want something that asserts a little bit more professionalism. So I went with the suit, and it became like a trademark thing for me. Everywhere I went, I tried to wear a tie and a shirt that were the colors of the home team, just for a little extra. If it was a championship game, neutral colors. That's an important note. You don't want to play both sides there. But the suit has been great. And I just think that, when I look back at being in a band, I loved performing so much. I really did. I wouldn't trade it for the world, being a drummer in a band and touring. But to being a freelance media outlet journalist, whatever you want to call it, and also touring and entertaining people and hosting a podcast has really been a great kind of pivot and a one step off, to be able to still use skills that I know that I have, but use them in a different way. So I look back and I think, man, I used to pay out the nose, and miss cell phone bills or utility bills just so I could get to Des Moines, Iowa, or Phoenix, Arizona, or Green Bay, Wisconsin to cover this game. But it was all worth it because sleeping in airports or rental cars or whatever, helped build the brand that I have, that got me recognized to bring me on board to be a member of a team and then director of media for a league.
And I agree with you. All the things you did in the past built up. Sometimes you do things not knowing where it's going to take you. And every relationship you built, it helped you get to where you are now. It helped you solidify this position. So you've now graduated from round two, Richard. It's amazing that you're living your dream, but let's look to the future, to round three here. What's the next dream that you're chasing?
I don't know yet, because I've been very happy with where I am, and I don't feel like I'm aiming for the middle, because some people have mentioned, like, do you think, you should start aiming a little higher, reaching for something beyond indoor football? And yes, I have. And it's tough because the relationships that you talked about that I've built on this journey have been so great. And I never want to forget about anybody. And I don't think that I would, but I know and I respect, rites of passage and paying dues. When I was in the garage band, which I keep going back to, but there's a lot of parallels there. We wanted to, or I guess I wanted to play the Warp Tour so bad because the style of music my band played, and to get a lot of bands I listened to, they had done their time playing in the hot sun through Corpus Christi, Texas, or Utah in the middle of July, under these tents. They had paid their dues playing on this tour to get to that next level, because they understood that it was something where that's how you build a fan base. That's how you get your name out all across the country. So for me, I feel like working for a team in a league such as the CIF is like that rite of passage, paying those dues. I would love more than anything to be on a team as play by play, because to have your voice on some of those amazing moments in sports history, to me, is just like a dream come true. But I think ultimately, my dream keeps changing, because I never saw myself in Omaha, Nebraska. I never saw myself doing director of media and marketing for an indoor football league. But I also know that, I never expected to be moving to Sioux Falls, South Dakota either, or going to the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. So everything changes, from year to year, day to day. I would love nothing more than to be with a team that is like the 49ers and be their play by play, or hosting a podcast that sustains itself because of all the different sponsors that have come on. And I get to go into a studio every day for 3 hours like Dan Patrick, and I have my producers there that I can BS with. And then we have a great lineup of guests. But it's just really, it's ultimately not up to me. It's up to fate. Whatever fate decides is what I'm doing and where I'm going. And that's how it is at the end of the day.
That's great. And you mentioned the support your wife has given you. And I know from talking to you how much she's meant to you throughout this whole journey. How does her support play into kind of where both of you take your future?
Well, she's always open to move kind of anywhere, because she can find work anywhere. And believe me, like, it is ridiculous how easy it is for her to find work different places.
Wow.
I mean, Spokane, she booth rented, which is, I think, kind of the Dan Patrick show version of what she does, where she sets her own hours, she has her own clientele. She charges her own prices. She loved doing that, but it got to be where it's a very roller coaster of itself.
Sure.
She enjoys having a consistent paycheck, and there are times where things are a little slower than they are at other times of the year. It's not always prom season, you know, it's not always 16-year-old girls coming out to get their hair done and they'll pay out the nose to look pretty for one night, you know. And she understood that it's not always wedding season. So she's supportive in the way that she knows she can get work just about every city that she goes to, because the kind of work she does is always in demand. It really is. Doesn't matter the year. She fortunately got in with Ulta Beauty in Sioux Falls and was able to transfer to another one down here in Omaha. So her paychecks have not stopped whatsoever. In fact, she's doing even better down here than she was up there. So she's able to support me in the way that, you know, she just says, just worry about you. You know, I've got me taken care of. And because she was able to go through school, graduate, and now she has a career in what she loves to do. She wants that for me. And I think that's a huge thing too. So support goes both ways. And if it doesn't in your household, then that's a huge red flag and something that you'll need to address. But you need to support your significant other, and then they will support you. And I'm not saying to do one in order for the other to happen. It's just kind of, you know, common sense and a courtesy is like, you know, you support them, they'll support you. And that's how it needs to be. That's how it should be. But for everybody that doesn't have a significant other, I mean, find friends, family, colleagues that are on the same page as you or in a similar situation, because guys like you and Jeff Radcliffe have been so supportive also while in school and now after. And it's always fun to still send you guys stuff that I've been working on and see if there's anything I can do to improve it. So support system is huge. My wife has been a rock star throughout all of this. And sometimes I think she enjoys my journey almost more than I do, just because of the different things. Like she gets to be down, you know, on the sideline for football games now, or she gets to talk to famous people too every now and then if we go and interview somebody on location. So she gets the perks as well. Don't let her fool you.
Well, a support system is so important because it's a very stressful job and it takes a lot to get through it. There's ups and downs. There's a lot of long hours. There's sleepless nights sometimes, and it's tough. It really is. So everyone who's watching this or listening to this definitely have that great support system in place. All right, Richard, final regular question for you before we get to the lightning round. What do you want people to say about Richard's contributions to the sports and entertainment world when they reflect on what you've done?
You know, I don't want people to think that I was better than anyone. I just want to be known for the work that I put in. You know, I think I've always said that one of the greatest compliments that you can get in any industry is when you apply for a job and the employer says, you know, I don't have anything for you right now as far as your skill set, but I could probably make something. I could open something. And I think that's a huge compliment to get, because there's a lot of people that see talent, and that's always, you know, great to hear things like that. Like I know talent, I see this, and I think I can make something happen for you, even if I don't have an opening in that department right now. But the other greatest compliment you can receive is having your work be acknowledged by your colleagues. You know, people that you've either gone to school with, worked for, you know, or just come into contact with along the journey. And I love when people tell me that I'm great at what I do. And some of them, I know that they're my friends and they feel like they have to say that. So really, you know, just hearing that your hard work is being recognized, it's huge. So at the end of the day, I mean, whenever I retire or whatever, I mean, I would like to think that what I've done and how much passion and energy, blood, sweat, and tears I put into however long my journey is, was not only Hall of Fame worthy, but just something that inspires people. Because that's another takeaway from this, is that I never expected to inspire people, and somehow I have. So that's been a perk too. And I think it's great to hear people say that they came close to giving up on something, or they thought so long about trying this idea but never did, but then they saw me doing what I do and they're like, man, like if that's all it takes, which it's not all that it takes, but you get what I'm saying. It's like if you just have to not give up and believe in yourself, you can do a lot of things. So I'd like to inspire people. have a Hall of Fame worthy career, whatever that looks like. But I think really I just want to be known as a person that worked harder than a lot of people did, and made a lot of really great content and was just a really genuine human being through it all.
And you've inspired me, Richard. Your passion for everything you do, it's contagious. It's fun. It's like when you see someone as passionate about something as you are, it's just fantastic to, take a look at that and get motivated yourself to do the next big thing. And I appreciate all the effort you've put into not only school, your work, your family, everything. So, well, you are our first Advanced Achievement Award winner from the online world. Now you're going to be the first member of the online world to go into the bonus round. You ready for this?
I am ready.
All right, so it's rapid fire. It's all about dream things. There are only 7 questions, but we'll see how you do, and we'll see kind of where your mind's at with that quick delivery. All right.
Alrighty.
All right. Dream karaoke performance by you.
Dream karaoke performance. If I could do the live karaoke down at Rising Star in Universal Orlando, I would love to perform All the Small Things with members of Blink 182. I think that would be a lot of fun.
That would be awesome. We'll add Mac McDonald in there too if you're at Universal. That'll make it even better. All right, dream transportation to an event you're covering. So someone's going to pick you up to bring you to a beef game or wherever you're at. Dream transportation to get there.
I've never been big on limos. I'm not a limo guy, but I do think it would be fun to be picked up in like a team car or something like that, and have it be one of those big, obnoxious, like diesel trucks or something with the station or the team all over the side. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Perfect for you. I think that fits your personality perfectly. All right, I know you have your list on your podcast and on social media of people for your podcast, but besides the list, dream podcast interview.
Besides the list, oh man, and there's some really good ones on the list.
Who's on your list? Let's start with who's on your list.
Okay, well, Dan Patrick and Freddie Coleman were on it, and I have crossed them off. We're coming up on a year since my Dan Patrick interview, which was amazing. But on that is also Frank Caliendo, just because I want to have that moment where I go, okay, can I talk to John Madden for a minute and have him get it? I think interviewing people who have characters in character is such a treat if you're a journalist. I've seen wrestlers do it for local news that host big events like WrestleMania, and it's awesome. It's just so fun to see them because they love doing it, and to have the banter back and forth. Another one, John C. McGinley, Dr. Cox from Scrubs, but also avid sports fan. And then Rob Riggle, I think would be awesome because he's a huge sports fan and he's hilarious. So those would be my top 3 right now.
Great. I think it's basically like the old lineup for NFL on Fox doing all their skits, right? So other than McGinley, but he would fit right in too.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a kind of a weird one, so just kind of play with me here. Dream Richard Tieman ice cream flavor. If you could invent your own ice cream flavor to be sold in Omaha, what would be the flavors in there?
So a funny story. I went through the Chicago Midway Airport, and they had Harry Carey's 7th inning stretch, which isn't there anymore. It's like the White Sox bar and grill. I said, how cool would it be if I made it to the level of fame where I could have my own restaurant called Richard's Tieman Food and Nonsense, and it's just the craziest decor. So I think, food and nonsense ice cream flavor would be fun. I don't know what's in it other than like chocolate chip cookie dough and fruity pebbles, but I mean, it's just something out there that's a flavor combination you don't expect, but you can't put it down.
That's a good start, right? Those are 2 very unique ingredients that I don't think I've ever seen together in ice cream. So that's a good place to start. Dream soundtrack for a road trip.
Ooh, anything by the Foo Fighters. They've got a song for every occasion, and they play as well live as they do on album and acoustically. So really, you just can't go wrong. If I have to stick with one artist, definitely would be the Foo Fighters. Another one would be Motion City Soundtrack would be a good one.
Awesome. I have seen the Foo Fighters live. They were opening for the Chili Peppers when I was in college. Talk about a great show. That was awesome. And I was just watching a Slash documentary that had Dave Grohl in it being interviewed. And man, he was just so good. Like some of the stuff he was saying was just fantastic. So one of the things he talked about was that he's like, I've seen a lot of weird things in my life, but I never thought that one day I would be playing my kids' recital with Slash. Like they were like performing for like the school, like elementary kids. That's something. All right,
That's
two more
awesome.
for you. These two last ones are a little bit slightly more extensive, but dream 49ers defensive line. You can put 4 players up front. Who do you want? Can be
Ooh.
anytime. Can be now or could be any past players also.
Well, obviously, you got to go with some of the greats. I think Justin Smith from that 2012 defense. Oh man, that was such a fun defense to watch. He was great up front. Um, Solomon Thomas, great. Nick Bosa, another great one. I mean, really, there's a lot of different names to choose from. I know that he wasn't part of the line, but having Patrick Willis back in at linebacker would be huge for a dream defensive lineup. So yeah, there's a few guys over the years that I've had the privilege of watching that, man, that would be so much fun to see them all together.
Solomon Thomas drafted with the pick that the Bears traded to the 49ers to get Mitch Trubisky, among some other picks that they traded to the 49ers.
Yeah, Fred Warner too, edge rusher. It'd be fun. Yeah.
All right, final one. Dream. I don't even know if you play golf. Dream golf foursome.
Do not play golf, but I hear great things about Pebble Beach in St. Andrews.
All right, so I'm thinking about more. Who are you going to play with? Who are the other 3 people if you want to have a good conversation out there?
Okay, so a good round of golf. I would probably have to go with George Kittle and Chris Jericho. I think the stories that they probably have are great. And George Kittle's just a ball of energy. I think he would be fun to see out on a golf course. But Chris Jericho, also on my bucket list of interviewees, because he's achieved what I ultimately want to, which is a level of fame where you can do anything that you want just because you're Chris Jericho. He hosts his own podcast. He's acted in movies. He's still a phenomenal wrestler. So I think having him there, George Kittle being the huge wrestling fan that he is and that I am, that would play into that. But just a couple of guys that are high energy out on a golf course. I mean,
and that's 3, so you need one more. Give me one more.
One more. Let's see. One more I would pick would be Frank Caliendo. That's throw in the comedian in there.
Frank can do both his interview with you and the golf same time.
He can do commentary throughout the whole 18 holes.
All right. Thank you, Richard. One last thing. Any final words of advice for our current students and graduates before you take off today?
I know I've said this before, but I will say it again. Be open to everything, especially because these courses are only a month long. You really have to open your ears, shut your mouth, as crazy as that sounds, because you're in a broadcasting or sportscasting school. So you have to talk a lot. But when it comes to the weekly Zoom meetings that you guys do and feedback, I mean, attend every one of them that you can. Try to work your schedule around it, because it's all important information. And another thing that I learned along the way was give feedback to your feedback, something that I started doing with you late in the program, because, you know, circumstances for online students aren't always ideal. And so sometimes there's a reason why our audio sounds like this or why our video looks like that. And so any sort of help we can get for a future assignment, since there's only 4 of them, is always welcome. And then, of course, don't be afraid to, you know, challenge, terrible word, challenge your instructors if you don't agree with some of the feedback that you got. But, you know, do it in a professional and conversational way. Don't argue with them. But sometimes instructors can get it wrong too. But I think for you guys and us, the inaugural class, it was such a learning experience for both of us that I think that was something that some of us were afraid to do, but in the end, we really needed to, so that you guys knew what you could do better as well, because ultimately you guys were going to help us be the best that we could be, but you needed to know what we needed help with at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that feedback was huge for the first round with your first class, because you're right. We're trying to get better every day to make things as good as we can for you. So, Richard, you let me wear the fan show belt when I got to see you in Orlando. I appreciate that. I wish I had a belt to put on for you right now to send your way, but we do appreciate you being on today. And this is the latest edition of the Livin The Dream podcast. 2 down, many more to go. Thank you to Richard Tieman for joining us from Omaha tonight, and we will be back with another edition of the Livin The Dream podcast soon enough. We'll see you then.